Morning, everyone, or good afternoon, or good evening, depending on when you're watching this video. So, as you might have noticed, this was probably the first time in a long time that I let the whole intro play from start to finish. It's because we're at the end of the segment regarding uh, landing craft, and I can tell you for a fact that it was very exhausting to do all this research. And unlike the previous videos, what I've done here is I've actually done a PowerPoint presentation because what I wanted to do is try to wrap my head around this rule set and perhaps help you to do the same. Now, again, regardless of how much work I've done, I think I'm just scratching the surface here. I am not really going into too much depth because there are certain segments of the rules or sentences of the rules that are within this one sentence. There are two exceptions. And that is just, again, just the tip of the iceberg because I haven't had access to any Q&A on on this subject. Plus, since I'm not the proud owner of Rising Sun, I may not have the most up-to-date um, revision of Chapter G, and I was using as my reference my good old compact book. Thinking Cap, Memphis, Tennessee, Memphis Grizzlies, go Memphis, go. Not that we don't like the Raiders, but it's a different sport. We do like the Raiders. And Green Bay. And the Miami Dolphins. And a few other teams. Anyway. Got my ASL or Alpha Sigma Lambda swag back. That's pretty good. My son was using it throughout the school year. He's continuing his education at the high school level and treated very well by his teachers. Yep, that's good stuff. Side note, going back to landing craft, yeah, I thought that it would be easier than boats, but no, it's much more, I would say complicated, but intricate and involved. Yeah. But with that said, with no further ado, let's see what I mustered here and what I tried to assemble for you in order to get a taste of landing craft. I wouldn't say it's an in-depth review, unfortunately. If I was trying to do an in-depth review, I squarely failed. But if I got you curious into landing craft and you wanted to know a bit more than you already do know, or you're introducing yourself to landing craft, I'd say this series, a four-part series that I did, it's not so bad. So with that said, and no further ado, let's go on to the second slide. And what I did here, slide 2, is I got a little picture from Wikipedia for inspiration. That's a Studebaker US 6, 1941 to August 1945. That isn't a Studebaker, that's from my previous slide. Yeah, that's not no Studebaker. Maybe he runs on a Studebaker engine, who knows. Anyway, just a quick overview and review of what we've already discussed. We um, discussed the number to the left of the MP, which is the on-ground number. Uh, this is a um, partially armored landing craft by um, the topside armor factors here. It's a very large target. It has a main armament of 20L um, or the equivalent IFT of 12 with a rate of fire of 2. But if you're using the IFT, the rate goes down by 1. 330 portage points, and it's underlined, meaning it has a ramp. And then there is a crew survival of 9. Damage points is 10. And we'll learn in this segment that, well, and we did in the previous, that in this particular case, um, in this particular case, um, the way the way landing crafts are eliminated, it's not the same as ordinary vehicles. They actually have damage points, and once their damage points goes down to 0, and this one starts with 10, that's when they're eliminated. And along the way, as you fire at As you fire at landing craft, they incur damage points, and once their damage points go down, uh, they're eliminated and sunk, unless they're on ground or shallow water, or if they're on shallow water, they're not sunk, they're on ground. And this main armament is two AA guns. So the question I raised last night with my good friend Dennis Freeberg is we were playing an AFV that had a main armament that had the ability to do multiple kill rolls, but with an IFT equivalent. So we're saying, all right, if you use the IFT, does it get to fire? No, if we're using the two hit, does it get to do four IFT attacks or just one? So I'm guessing that the 12 is um, is the way they got the 12 is by taking the main armament equivalent and multiplying it by 2 to get the IFT equivalent. But if you use the regular to hit and you have a 20L that is a double, do you, do you roll twice on the 4 table, or do you roll just once? I'm not sure. I'm gonna have to ask that question on the Discord server. 330 pp underlined. That's a big, massive thingamajiggy. Well, this looks massive as well. More larger than a Studebaker. Yeah, okay. And I'm guessing the color is the size, red being a humongous vehicle. All right. Now, after all is said and done, when we're looking at ordnance, and let's see, I'm gonna turn off my video capture so you guys can see all the data. Once you're dealing with the um, with ordnance direct fire, uh, you can either do a vehicle target type or area target type. This table covers vehicle target type, and once you secured a hit, you roll for your 2 kill number, and then if the 2 kill is less, your dice roll is less than the 2 kill number, you take the 2 kill number minus your dice roll, and that's the number of points to be applied against your damage points. Damage points total. So if, let's say, your 2 kill number was 6, you rolled a 5, you would apply 1 DP against the total DP. In the previous example, it was 9, it would go down to 9. If you're firing AP fire, AP, APCR, APDS, or 1 DP, if the DR is less than half of your 2 kill number. So quite different depending on the type of fire you end up having. Now, if your dice roll for the 2 kill number is equal to 2 kill number, and you're firing HE fire, there's no effect except possible collateral attack on your vulnerable PRC. Again, if you're firing armor piercing rounds, if it's less than or equal to, less than your DR, but less, greater than 1/2 of your 2 kill DR, but less than or equal to the 2 kill, no effect on the LC, but possible collateral attack on vulnerable PRC. And if the DR is greater than your 2 kill number or dud, you have no effect on the LC and PRC, and here there's absolutely no effect from AP rounds. So this is LC ordnance direct fire using the vehicle target type. So you got to think twice about how you're going to declare your attack, and you need to hold your opponent accountable to it, because if they choose vehicle target type versus area target type, when they're firing on your LCs, the results can be drastically different. Okay, so now let's look at OBA and area target type, uh, and this is called an ordnance direct fire. Right, attack on the IFT. So you're treating it as an attack on the IFT, and as per C1.55, and basically here you're the attack that you do on the IFT for area fire and OBA. Uh, if you get a number KIA, that would be equal to the number of DP you apply. OBA area fire against unarmored. So here the table is a bit different because we know that it's an area target type that was declared, or offboard artillery is being declared. And what you have to look at now is the attack on the IFT. You're doing an IFT attack as per C.1.55, and then you got to look at your target to see if it was fully armored or unarmored. So if it's unarmored, across the board, you look at the effects as per an attack on a star type vehicle. But if it's partially armored or fully armored, I could be wrong about this, so double check in the rule book. You need a KIA number to apply um, against the uh, vehicle as damage points. And if the DR is a K number, there's no effect except possible collateral attack on the vulnerable PRC. And if the DR results in anything higher than a K number, there's no effect on the LC and PRC. For the case of an armored vehicle, but for or an armored landing craft, but an unarmored landing craft, it's basically your whatever you roll on the IFT attack. Now again, caveat emptor, you look at the rule book and there are quite a few EXs, and maybe repeating myself, but you really need to know seaborne attacks and beaches, the rules for seaborne attacks and beaches before you can really uh, grasp and handle landing craft. Had I known this before, I would have done my videos in another order, meaning I would probably cover seaborne attacks and beaches first. Um, but again, um, those two topics cannot possibly humanly be covered in 1 hour's time, unless you're doing a high-level overview, as what I'm doing here. And I think the major takeaway you can get from this presentation is really how to organize your thoughts and put things in tables while you're reading the rules, and then going back to your notes, reading them again, and then double checking your notes with a Q&A as well. Um, so that's what I meant, if I haven't said this before, that I am just simply scratching the surface here. Okay, landing craft and critical hits. This is interesting. George 12.64. A critical hit versus a landing craft only serves to increase the DP, uh, DP points against it by 1. It never doubles the 2-kill number, and a critical hit against a landing craft passengers are not applicable except as per 12.65 and 12.679, which are two other types of attacks that I'm may superficially cover here. All right, landing craft hit versus passengers vehicles and guns, 12.65. It applies to landing craft carrying any vehicle's Rex guns with target size 0, -1, -1. See exceptions. Exceptions were, off the top of my head, um, uh, passengers that are cart driven with a mule, I suppose. Yeah, sip of coffee. Ordnance rolls on upper structure hit versus the LC. Then the owner determines if the landing craft or the passenger vehicle gun was hit aboard the landing craft. So that's the owner of the landing craft that determines that. Does the landing craft get the hit, or does a passenger vehicle gun get the hit? If the 2-hit DR is greater than the 2-hit number, and the color die is less than the original white DR, one vehicle, wreck, or gun on the LC is hit. That I kind of find strange, and I'm not sure if I'm interpreting the rule correctly. Um, but it's funny that they mention that, okay, rolling higher than the to hit number, but the colored die is less than the original white they are, then a one vehicle wreck or gun on the LC is hit. Wow. Resolved as if in open ground. Should you do get a hit on a passenger gun or vehicle, it is resolved as if it was in open ground. Oh well. Now here come the fighter bombers. So um, along come your landing craft. I guess on D-Day the Luftwaffe may have gotten in a couple of aircraft, um, or was that Dunkirk? I remember watching the movie The Longest Day, and there was at least one Me-109 that got scrambled. But anywho, aircraft. It should be not an MF attack, but an MG attack versus a land craft. Always treat that LC as unarmored. Resolved as per 12.61. Bombs away, treat as fully armored, and resolve as per 12.62 or 12.63, depending on the target type chosen for the attack. Um, if vehicle or target type assume landing craft's armored factor to be 0, 2 kill case A and B apply. Near miss are always hit as hull hits using half of the final 2 kill number. So I guess the logic there is you got a 150 mil equivalent ordnance coming down from the sky, and the land nearby, the landing craft, of course there will be some damage. Fire bombers and Stukas will probably be a topic of a future video. Um, I like the fact that ASL has some semblance of flying weapons platforms, as they like to call them in the armed forces. It's an excellent platform. A platform for what? It's a beautiful romanticized airplane. Nope, it's a platform. It's a weapons platform, meaning you put weapons on it, and its job is to deliver that ordnance at its target. Oh well. Second to last slide, and it's like 18 minutes, and nobody can do justice to this in 18 minutes. Not even myself, but we've tried. All right, so 12.67 collateral attacks versus landing craft PRC apply normally except where stated otherwise. See 12.111, 12.123, and 12.13. 12.671 when landing crafts are attacked as an armored target by a non-ordnance direct fire attack, the only PRC which are vulnerable to resulting collateral attacks are inherent crew plus 2 protective DRM applies, guns and unarmored vehicles plus PRC. If the landing craft is attacked as an unarmored target less than or equal to star, all PRC are vulnerable to the attack with inherent PRC plus 2 protective DRM. Have to double check that. See also 12.6711 aerial MG versus AFE and 12.6712 residual firepower and mines. I think only type A and B mines apply to landing craft. Here's the last slide, and I'm going to do a sigh of relief. The other rules that I really didn't cover in depth is really 12.672 ordnance OBA hull hit, ordnance OBA turret hit, and the reason why I didn't cover these things in depth is there are two different types of attacks that, or they're not really two different types of attacks, but they bear two different types of consequences. Um, where one can really hit your vulnerable PRC, the other one not so much. And then 12.674 covers ramps. If the ramp is down and its covered arc is facing the enemy, there are certain consequences there versus a gun. Again, uh, there's nuances there. Passenger vehicle PRC, you've got to look at 12.676, and also AFE Rec 10, and there's a special rule with 12.678 PP capacity greater than 8 to 40. And again, this is a high level overview of the rules. Um, and um, the last part of the rules really is something that you may want to read first before you go into the first part that covers the consequences. Um, yeah, so that's pretty much it for landing craft, and it was a bit of a Leviathan kind of work to do, um, and I think the next step here is to find a scenario that involves landing craft and actually put the counters on the board and the two combatants and slowly and surely go through each phase. What you'll experience is first and foremost the enemy firing at you. They will be firing at you with ordnance and non-ordnance attacks, and this is where part 4 comes into play, right? And insofar as part 1 comes into play, landing craft that are in play on the first turn are considered to be in motion. So I'm going to turn back my. They're considered to be in motion. So the first opportunity they will get to fire is probably in the advancing fire phase. Um, if during the movement phase they come aground in shallow water or get beached, if you successfully beach one, then the following turn you might have a prep fire to do. So I think that the first uh, the first instance where you get to incur your uh, the necessity of your rules knowledge will be in the defensive fire phase, and you have to know your rules in that sense. Well, you have to be at least familiar with the rules in that sense, because then if you have any doubts, you can always consult the rule book. You know, um, that's the way the game is played. It's a rules-based game based on culture. Enjoy, guys. So that's the last of my um, series on landing craft. I hope you enjoyed um, the the segment. It was really a brain buster to go through landing craft. I think the next step would be probably acquisition of Rising Sun and getting the updated version of Chapter G. G. I wish they, I wish it's remade somehow and simplified. Um, and the other thing that is possible is like thinking about what are the consequences of these rules. Now, what do I mean by that is that look at bocage, and the really interesting thing about bocage is um, I came across Jim Bishop on uh, Strum Front Saturdays, and he proposed, and in his blog he proposed that bocage, for example, seems to favor the attacker as opposed to the defender, and uh, in reality, a no commander would say to their troops, say, okay, go ahead, charge those hedges and carelessly go in there and you know attack the enemy, because the enemy is probably waiting in bocage to ambush you. So you've got to, as the attacker, you've got to be careful. And the rules are structured in such a way, and I can understand how, that as the attacker, you can go headstrong into the bocage and eliminate your enemy, and pretty much they don't have any retribution to you. Here with the landing craft, but when I'm reading the beginning segment of the rules, it's almost as if the passengers, and they talk about riders, but they're just using a generic term throughout the rule set, as if there could be riders, but there aren't, as per the rules, any riders for landing craft. So it's really a moot point. There's only passengers. They seem to be well protected, unless it's not small arms fire that's firing, they're ordnance attacks that are firing, in which case collateral attacks can occur. I'm not sure how fair that is, based on the fact that landing craft were really um, lightly built, and their hulls were porous in some sense of the word. Anywho, hey, I did the best I could. Enough said, and let's see what else we can talk about. I have some pretty good shows coming up. I was planning on doing a live feed of Stormfront Saturdays, but technical issues kind of kept me from doing that. So what I do now is I have my Stormfront Saturdays um, pre-recorded, and I will air them in due time on a preset date and time. That's what I do for most of my videos these days, just to save time on my end, because it is a lot of work. I was watching Dan and Nani's here talk about the CSR awards, and talking about the fact that there is a lot of work to be done in producing a video. I can attest to that. There is, and this baby took a lot of my time. This baby took a lot of my time, and I wish I was more successful at it, or I felt more optimistic about it. Yeah, so for Stormfront Saturdays, uh, despite the fact that it hasn't taken off like I'd like it to take off, there was some initial successes, some technical failures, but I hope to have at least one more show of Stormfront Saturdays with some heavy hitters in ASL talk about Advanced Squadron soon, and it's great. I think it all is great. Also, I'm gonna go back to showing you guys some after action reports, because I've had some very interesting games lately. Played a couple of new scenarios, and they turned out to be very enjoyable and very interesting. Tense, to be honest with you, but hey, um, it is what it is. And for Second Front, I'm enjoying that game a little too much than I should, but it's always interesting because the AI is quite unusual in the sense that it seems to be intelligent. And the last time I've played a game to that effect that had a very intelligent AI was way back. It's called Jagged Alliance. So it was a turn-based real-time simulation, and it was complicated to achieve a victory. And I think Second Front is a lot like it. Now, in other news, this channel is enjoying a lot of attention. There have been ups and downs in terms of subscribers, but overall, they're okay. I never went into this uh, for subscribers and money, so uh, I want to show you one fellow that does cover the channel. I've mentioned him before. I'll pause the video on my end and get to his YouTube page. So here's Dan from No Enemies Here. See, if I turn off the video capture, No Enemies Here, September 6th, episode 12. Listen to this, guys.
Dan is red.
Sto molto bene. Mangia, mangia e fa bene, signore Dan. So, sto molto bene means I'm doing well. Eat, eat, and do good. I thought fa bene means eat well, or fa bene means I think do good. Yeah. So that's Dan's story. Uh, and uh, Artie is working hard on doing a lot of tutorials and whatnot. And the CSR awards. Let's see if I got. Ah, there it is. Here, let's look over the CSR awards segment. So don't be a chooch. A chooch is a mule. Do tune in to the CSR awards if you can. Support Dance channel. Like and subscribe to mine. And I am laughing because a lot of work is really an understatement. It's an understatement, really. You don't realize how much work you're actually doing when you're doing these things. 'Cause you're having fun. You know, you're interacting with an audience. It doesn't matter whether it's 100,000 or 100 or 10. You're still interacting with people, and you're excuse the expression, you are busting your balls. And hey, yeah, you're having fun. Look at the other uh, videos here. Dan also goes over a lot of the news on a lot of the other sites that I follow and subscribe to. Let's see, TIK, Christmas at Stalingrad. That's one of his newest videos, and I highly recommend it. And here, Eric von Munstein, the brilliant military strategist. Well, not according to TIK. You left your buddy to rot in Stalingrad, dude. Get with it. Anyway, guys, enough said. George, over. Take care.